everyone.
Everybody made it.
Can everybody hear?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I assume if there are public that Faith or whoever the city staff is will let them in since we do not have host controls. But does everybody have the agenda?
Yeah,
Yep.
simple agenda.
Yes. So I think we should start with a round of introductions, because that's number one on the agenda. And then it's less formal than a normal meeting since we don't have anybody yet to call it to order, but we can just start with intros if that works. And since I'm already off mute and talking, I'll go first. I'm Melissa Newts and I am on the commission. I've been on since 2018. And I'm super excited that you're all here doing this with us because we've been hearing from the public for a long time that they want more influence over local government. And so this is a great chance to really directly influence some of our foundational documents. So thank you for being here with us.
I guess I can go too. So I'm Carrie Kale, and I am also a commissioner. I am one of the newer commissioners on board here. Tori and I were elected last November, and so I'm a commissioner starting this January. So I'm excited to be here as well, and I really do appreciate the three of you stepping up and giving us your time to work on this. So thank you so much.
I'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, you can wait for
No,
me.
it's Wyatt. I think I know everybody but Melissa pretty well, so it's good to see everybody.
I'm Tom Bluerock. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with me, but I'm an architect. I've been coming here for about the last 30 years. I've lived downtown for the last 4. I've been sort of developing downtown. I've followed the city processes pretty closely for the last couple of years, and I'm really happy to be involved in this process.
Hi, I'm James Willich, and I live on F Street. I've been in Livingston since 2001. Yeah, and in the same house since 2005. And yeah, I've had an interest in the city of Livingston for a number of years, and now having moved around a little bit, seen a couple more things just shortly. Now I like to get my hands involved with seeing how the city moves forward. So yeah, I feel like it's a unique opportunity and one that I had to take.
Thank you, everyone. So the next item on the agenda is the election of the chair, so normal and secretary. So once we decide on the chair, that person will then be running the meeting moving forward. So normally what we would do is a motion and a second, and then we would vote on it. Sometimes there might be more than one motion, and usually we would discuss things before we vote on it. So that's sort of the standard process. So
I think Tom should chair the
Oh
committee.
God, no.
I make a motion for Wyatt.
No.
I mean, shouldn't one of the commissioners be chair?
Yeah, I think so. Keep us in line.
So let's nominate Melissa.
I would say that I would love to not be chair and give somebody else a chance to run meetings. Not because I'm not opposed to being chair of this, but I think it's really good to share power and share responsibility and have everyone feel really invested.
Well,
So I would welcome to not be the chair just because I already get to run one very big meeting over and over. And I think there's real value to having other people in leadership positions.
So let's nominate Carrie.
All right.
Second it.
Without objection.
Okay, so we got a motion for Carrie. Anything else? Otherwise, I think we should vote. All right. Let's say all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Opposed? Any opposed? Carrie, the meeting's yours.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Thanks, everybody. So I appreciate that. And so we'll move the meeting ahead. And so now we also need to elect a secretary. And I may ask Melissa or Faith to potentially let us know what the position, what duties the secretary needs to uphold so that the person getting nominated knows what they're to expect. I'm assuming it's note taking, but can we clarify, Faith, if you're there, or Melissa, if you know, just to be helpful with that.
Is Faith on the call?
Her computer's up and she might have just gotten us up and gone off to do her other things, but I'm not seeing Faith. Melissa, thoughts?
So off the top of my head, and this is not an expert opinion, I think the chair or the secretary usually would keep track of like the votes, right? So like who made the motion, who made the second, who was in favor, who was opposed. And then the other things that are obvious, like for us, it would be edits or like edits to the document or the sort of, not all the detail, but like the basic substance of our conversation. And we could get feedback from city staff on what's required by law, but I think that's sort of the gist of it. So it's not like a verbatim conversation, but it's, Kale talked about green flashing lights and Tom was opposed or whatever, you know, like it's just like the general outline of the conversation more than all of the content in my experience, but we can get clarification from Michael too later.
And we also do have a recording.
Well, does staff put together meetings and the meeting is recorded, is it not? So there's a record of everything that goes on.
Yeah, it's basic minutes, right?
Yes,
Motions and resolutions, generally speaking.
that's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion to
Yep.
elect someone as secretary?
It's like first chicken here. It's like, who are we gonna pin this one on?
I'm a terrible note taker.
I am too. It's not in my will.
do it. I'll do
All
it.
right, yeah,
All right.
Do it.
I'll move,
I will-
James.
Okay, I will nominate James, and I think we can I have a second to the nomination of James as
Second.
secretary. Second by Tom. All in favor?
All right.
Okay. Aye. Anyone opposed?
Well, that was easy.
All right. So perfect. So we have now elected, we've done our introductions and we have elected our chair and our secretary. So we'll move on in the agenda to new business. So the new business is review resolution, and I'm going to make this change. That resolution number should be 1513, not 1517. Outlining the proposed scope, authority, and deadline for the written recommendation to the city commission. And then also within that is set a specific date and location for future meeting. Does everyone have a copy of the resolution?
Yep.
Want to make sure. Okay. So this is
This link here, right? Correct? No,
It
that
looks
is-
like that.
I do not have a copy of that. No, I'm sorry, that's the Zoom link.
okay, hold on. I might actually give me a moment because I think I have. Oh, I don't know if I have it.
It would be nice to know what our charge is.
Yes, I would agree with you. I have
Carrie?
a paper copy. Yes, sir.
Quick question. I just looked at the copy of mine and you say you want to change it to 1513 instead of 1517 or vice versa? Because mine right here says 1513.
Yeah, mine does too.
Yeah. But what does your agenda say?
Oh.
My agenda says 1517.
It
So
does.
just reading. So just read,
Okay.
yes. So the resolution we are working on is 1513. That is correct. It was
Copy.
misidentified in the agenda. So I just wanted to
Okay.
make that clear.
Gotcha.
Now, does anybody have a digital copy of resolution 53rd or 5th? Why can you, I don't know if I can give
I'm gonna
you, can you
drop
send
it
it to me?
in
Okay.
the chat,
Perfect.
maybe.
Is it huge?
No,
No, it's a couple of K. It's just a couple of paper pages.
Just throw it in a PDF and throw it out to the email.
yeah, coming at you right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Carrie, I just would like to make a request that we put it in the minutes because, or yeah, we put it in the minutes so the public has access to all the same information that we have.
Thank you.
Okay, I've not gotten it yet.
Sent it.
Why did you send it to just Tom, or did you send it to all of us?
I sent it to all of you. Everybody who was on that email while we were waiting.
Okay, perfect. Here's what I can probably do. I can get it to come
I just saw it pop up.
I haven't gotten it yet.
Oh yeah, here it is. Perfect. One second.
I'm right down the street from Wyatt, so I got it first probably.
I was gonna say, like, I think you're a block away.
Here, I just got it.
Let me see. Okay, how's that? Can people see that? I just brought it up on the screen.
Perfect.
Okay. So this is the resolution. So this is our charge. Of what we are working on. I don't know if it's better summarized at the top right there. So give folks a second to look at that. And tell me if we need to move the screen. I need to move the screen for you. And I'm sort of, as you're kind of looking at that, and looking at our agenda today. I'm thinking about our goal for the meeting today. What we want to accomplish today, whether it's really just making sure that we have all this information, we kind of understand what our charge is. And then
How large a document is the strategic plan document?
It's not large. You want a copy?
19 pages.
It's 751K.
Sure.
I'm an inch.
Boy, I'm so prepared for this meeting, aren't I?
Oops.
So I'm just going to read the top of the resolution. So resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, establishing an ad hoc committee to review the mission, vision, values, and goal statements of the City of Livingston's organizational strategic plan.
Yeah, it's pages, if you get into the plan, it's pages 3 and 4.
Or 2 and 3?
Or sorry, 2 and 3. Apologize.
Right? Yeah.
It's 2 and 3, and it's like, yeah, right down the center of what we're supposed to be looking at. Pretty clear.
Melissa, may I ask, I know that you were on the commission before I was, and that former commission kind of started this process forward. I wondered if you would share with us sort of your thoughts of what you felt like that the commission at the time, and granted that yes, I'm a commissioner, but I'd love to kind of just hear your thoughts about maybe what you thought we were hoping to accomplish.
Yeah, thanks. I wish I had that. I probably do somewhere, the original document from last year with all the notes on it, but essentially this part of the strategic plan is really like the visionary part, like what are our aspirations, and like that's the framework under which all of the spreadsheet and to-do list is really filled out. And so there is some language that's been sort of more hotly debated or more hotly sort of deliberated upon by the commission that sort of, depending on the intent and the meaning behind it, can have pretty different implications in like how the work is done or what work is prioritized as a city as a whole. So some examples might be providing for growth. Like, is it our role as a city to provide for growth? Like, is that like, that's just like a phrase that I think has been noodled and changed since I've been a commissioner.
And what does that mean?
And then, I'm sorry.
And what does that mean? What does growth mean? You know,
Right. And so the other thing, Carrie, would be like, we're organizational values. So under the, I'm just here on this, the bottom of the page 2, the first page we're looking at. So are these our top 5 values? Are these the 5 most things important to us as local government? And what do those things mean? And then when we're talking about goals, we have, again, 5 categories. And one of the previous commissioners, former chair Hoagland, was wondering if we needed to add another category for goals. And if so, what would that be? And what would the verbiage be? I think one option that was thrown out potentially was around equity. And what would equity look like in the context of local government? So those are just some of the high level conversations that has happened at the commission, but I can tell you that like we really do pay attention to every word and phrase, and we really pay attention to like what is the intent behind that, because then as we work through with the city manager and the city staff works through this, that's what they're referring back to when they're setting up the goals and priorities for the city and how we spend money and how we work on projects. So it seems like not a lot, but in some ways to me, it's like the most important thing, these foundational documents. And these 2 pages of words really matter in terms of like what is going to be in these categories and how are we making decisions when it comes to work and money, like how we do our work and what we spend money on as a city. So is that enough for you, Carrie? Does that kind of like help?
Yeah, I think that's helpful.
And then like, I guess the other piece is like, it gets to be a lot of work to like actually edit things well. And so the commission didn't think that was the best use of time for a commission meeting. And the public always wants to engage. This is a great chance to bring in community members who really want to engage at this level to help us like noodle over the words. And then all this eventually would go back to the commission, and the commission would take the edits into consideration and implement things and vote on it. And then it would go to the city and they'd fill out the chart.
yeah, there was a little process started, I think it was last fall, that had a number of meetings on that subject. Isn't that true? I sat in on a few of them.
This did come up at the meetings last year. Yeah, that's how we got to where we are today.
So that's why we're all here, among other things.
Is there I guess my other question for today would be, has there been discussion about a process to go through this? Has anybody thought of anything and how we want to approach this?
Wyeth, if I may, I guess I don't want to step on anybody's toes if you're asking direct. I've been thinking about this thing since we got, selected, and I really feel like the first thing we should do is just read it and know it. Like that's what I was doing, but like introspectively think how over the last 3 years have we followed what we have? Like how good of a job have we done with this? Like, does it still match even? like, that's how I kind of felt the process would be, to start, like, where's the friction with how we feel now versus what the document was in 2019. And that might be a locus of where we would start to think about where things need to be changed, if they need to be changed even.
Is that when this was put together, 2019? So it's 3 years old?
It says approved 5 March 19.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a few years old, and it's presumably a 5-year plan. So we're about halfway through, I would think. I mean, that's just my thought.
But yeah, why, getting to your question, I don't know that there is like, that there's not been a specific process approved as to, you know, like how we would move that forward. I feel like that's sort of our charge at this point, is to, you know, determine how we want to move forward looking at this. You know, I don't know if it's like we look at this sort of section by section. I would certainly be open, you know, to any thoughts from the committee as a whole. You know, do we, starting on page 2, look at City of Livingston organizational mission, and then look at the organizational vision, and then go through, you know, each one of those. Do we, you know, cut it up into segments so that we're looking at those things one at a time, you know, as we come to meeting to meeting. I know I'm looking at our agenda here as well, and looking at a deadline for written recommendation to the City Commission. Let me see. I'm trying to see if we have a deadline. Shall have written recommendations to the City Commission within 90 days from the date of the creation for consideration, approval, or adoption. So I guess we have 90 days to get that done, if that's my understanding.
So typically, so I've done this a number of times for a lot of different organizations. Most of them are for-profit, few of them are nonprofit. When you're starting with something as established as a city, usually don't like throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, to James's point, you know, normally where I would start is we would look at, and these are progressive statements, right? So missions brings to vision, which brings to values, which brings to goals. So they build upon each other progressively. And typically what I would do is do like we would read, reflect, and then do a plus delta, which is like, delta means change, good or bad, either way. And then a plus would be like, what do we think is working? And then delta would be, what do we think needs to change in each statement? And then that would kind of coalesce the discussion. And generally speaking, you know, I mean, you don't normally see radical shifts from established organizations, right? You usually see kind of marginal adjustments. But that's sort of been my experience. And then you just kind of draft a statement, and then everybody kind of, you do that plus delta again, and you sort of noodle it, and then you end up with sort of, you know, I think the editorial process, to Melissa's comment, is like editing by committee is you know, you end up with a camel, right, instead of a horse. So it never really works out very well. But I think if you have that conversation, then maybe you know, someone works on that language and then come back and determine if we like that or not. But fundamentally, looking at the statements to understand, is there things that are really not in there that are delta, and then are there things in there that we really love that right? And I think, like, you know, Melissa, you brought up equity. That's not really in here. So if that's something that we really love, then that would be in a delta category, right?
Chair Kale, can I?
Yes, please.
So 2 comments, I guess. My first is that in this resolution, it says that the temporary ad hoc committee shall have a written recommendation to the City Commission within 90 days from the date of creation for consideration. We voted on this back on January 18th. We might be past the 90-day mark. And so I was wondering if you could like follow up, or somebody, we could make it so that somebody has the job of following up with city staff and getting like maybe a legal opinion on that, because we might need to ask for an extension immediately, which we had to do on the planning board when we were working on the growth policy. The second thing I wanted to say is I like what Wyeth said. I like what you said, like putting it in pieces, and then also like, what do we like? What would we add, kind of things. But this also is the first time the city of Livingston has ever had a strategic plan. So what you're looking at is the original. There was no strategic plan for the city of Livingston before this. So while we're an established organization, it's a new way of doing the work, relatively new compared to how long the community has been here. So that's another reason why I think the commission was excited for more public participation, since we're still sort of in the infancy of this idea of a strategic plan. And now we've just had a few years of seeing it in action and seeing what does it mean to have it and how is it used by local government. That's all.
The alternative to kind of like and I'm happy to put a format together, and some of this work we can do individually and come back. It doesn't have to be done in group, but the alternative to the plus delta exercise would be sort of like it would be like a word map or cognitive statement map. So we would say, when we think of the mission of Livingston, what are all the phrases or words that come up? And then we would map that correspondingly by iteration and growth, and then weight it. And I've done everything from like, you get a weighted number of votes that you vote in each of those statements that then kind of gets coalesced together just to sort of come to consensus. So I'm not married to anything here. I think it's kind of up to how from zero, I guess, to the commissioners think we need to start. Or if we're happy starting with this as a baseline, would be my approach there.
Do others have thoughts?
Well, the plan exists. And I mean, what Wyeth is basically saying is, I think it's got a certain amount of validity, and people are sort of recognize that it has a certain amount of validity. I don't think we're being charged to start over. I think we're really being charged to sort of work it through and see what, exactly what you said. What's good about it, what's bad about it, what should be changed, what should be emphasized.
Well, I could build a little process template that would do that. It would just break the phrases apart and then allow you to have a little plug and play spot to stick your concepts in those two categories, and everybody can do that independently. And it's pretty low overhead. There's no real or wrong answers, right?
For something like this, there really aren't any wrong answers. It's just a question of what you say.
It'll get through the cheese grater.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a problem.
Well, that's why I thought this was such an interesting project, because we are a city that has been around for a long time, and we have not had a plan. So, lots of other cities, at least the municipalities that I've dealt with, they use this as their template to, how do we make decisions about where we're going to zone this or where we're going to do that? How many buildings do you want there? So very cool opportunity with this. And I mean, not a ton to add to that, just other than how do we feel like we've done for the last 3 years with this brand new tool that we have? Maybe we need to tune it, maybe not so much.
I do think the element that maybe is missing from that exercise would be that if there's, and we could create a secondary category for just kind of random thoughts, but like, what are the major challenges that we're facing as a city? And sort of, because it's the starting with a plus delta is a little insular, because you're already starting with a predefined idea. So if there's elements that aren't, like, again, I think equity is probably a good example that it's not in here. So where if you just do plus delta, then equity may never come up as a topic. And I'm not validating that one way or another. It's just an example.
Wouldn't that be a delta?
Well, it could be from the values, but typically what ends up happening, that's a problem with this process, is that you get too attached to the concept of, say, stewardship. And then you're focused on the plus delta stewardship rather than sort of categorically what are we missing, right? So you can kind of hybrid it a little bit if you kind of said, if we did what are the largest challenges facing the community, and then we did a plus delta against the current phrases, you might be able to see some kind of like, crossover and flight paths there.
Well, I mean, there's things that are going to be coming up as being highly debatable, and an awful lot is probably going to be non-debatable.
Yep.
And it's a question of sort of identifying those things and working them through.
Right. And I'm just trying to drive towards a process to do that. Right. I agree.
I really like the idea of getting some sort of process in place, because for me, looking at this and looking at the resolution, I'm sort of like, okay, now where do we start?
It's pretty open-ended.
Yeah, how do we start this, right? And where do we get how do we get to where we want to go? I would love the idea, like, so just in my personal opinion, I think the idea of if you could set up that sort of framework for us to work within, that seems, from my opinion, like a good place to start. Certainly I want to hear from everyone else. And then I'm assuming, if we, just to think this through for a moment, if we wanted to do that and you set that up and sent that out to all of us, as long as we're working on our own on this, and then we come together to discuss it, we should be in line with all of our legal obligations on how we can work on this and not have illegal meetings. So we just need to be aware of that. And I would ask Melissa if the process that I just laid out in the way that he could give us that information to work on independently seems like it is legal.
This sort of brings up, are these proper public meetings?
Yes.
Notice, and anybody can listen in, right?
Because we will open, as we close this meeting, we will give a moment for public comment. So if there's folks that want to give public comment at the end of this meeting, we will allow that.
Okay, so is there any restriction on us talking to each other?
There is, in the fact that we cannot talk to one another in a quorum. And we can't have a walking meeting. So Tom, I can't come to you and talk to you about this one thing that I really want to do. And we have a discussion about it. And then I leave and I go talk to Wyeth and I tell Wyeth that you and I have this conversation and this is what I really want to do. So just to make it.
That's kind of getting around the quorum rule.
Yeah, so we can't do those types of things.
But we can discuss things among ourselves.
Yeah.
In twos.
In twos.
Carrie,
Sorry,
you asked me a question.
if we're at the bar and one of you shows up, you gotta go.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So
I'm not going to be the one to leave.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get us back together here, and I directed a question to Melissa. So Melissa, thoughts on the question I asked you?
So the first thing that we should ask about is the 90-day, do we need an extension? The second thing you asked is a legal question, like a process question. So that should go to the city manager and or the city attorney, but we can take that question to him and he can either help us answer it or help us get a legal opinion on process. That's that would be my recommendation.
Perfect. So this is what I'm going to say, because we have 15 minutes left in the meeting. So I want to make sure that we kind of get what we need to get done today so that we're prepared for another meeting. First, let me ask the group, the process, the idea that WISE sets forth a format for us to work within. Are folks comfortable with that? Does that seem like a good place to start?
Well, yeah, as a first cut of looking at it, I mean, we all, and we can all have ideas about that. But at least getting some kind of an outline framework would be good. And in the meantime, I need to get into it. And so the question is sort of how often should what do you think it takes for you to put that together, Wyatt?
I'll have it for you in an hour.
In an hour?
Yeah, I mean, I've done it a bunch of times.
Okay, so you've got some templates.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna read. Yeah. I know what it looks like. I mean, I've almost got the first couple pages done already, so it's easy.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask everybody, James, does that for you feel like a good place to start?
Sure. Yeah. Any tool is good to start with.
Melissa?
Yes, and I have a comment too when it's time.
Okay. So I'm going to come back for comments. So wife and the group, since you're doing the work on this, let me reach out to the city manager and make sure that this is in our lane and that this is an okay way for us to start, that you provide us with this format that then we would work in independently and come back together with. So I will take care of that and get back to you. And then Melissa, you have a comment.
Yes, I want to make sure that we are in our lane and not wildly out of our lane, because the temptation will be real as we start to go into this document. It is not our job to evaluate if the city staff has been executing the plan well. When it comes to this part, so city manager evaluates city staff, city commission evaluates city manager. But I do think that it makes sense. I think, and if I understand the intent correctly, like I do think that it makes a lot of sense to like, definitely like the way Wyatt has proposed it, like here are the challenges facing our community. Do we have that covered when we're thinking about goals? Do we have it, here are the important values of our community. Do we have that covered? Are we making sure that we have a category that reflects our community? So I just want to make sure we don't get like pulled into the weeds where we will get lost and we stay to the text, which is like the big picture. That's my comment. Thank you.
Well, we're charged with revising and changing or blessing a strategic plan or elements of same. And at least as a proposal. I mean, we are not charged with that. We are charged with just the mission, vision, and values, not the whole plan itself. The whole plan is a whole big conversation, separate work sessions, big conversations between like after city staff does a bunch of work, and that'll be commission and city manager conversation with the public in attendance. We're not evaluating the strategic plan as a whole.
5 things.
5 things, yeah. Correct. Okay, so I am going to stop us at that and say that Wyeth is going to work on this format. I will get back to Wyeth to make sure that we are doing this in a proper manner. And then if that's the case, then we'll have that to work on independently to then come back at the next meeting to discuss. So I'm going to move us on.
My only follow-up question to that would be, do you want to take a breath at all of the content as homework, or do you want to do just a part of it as homework? And, you know, or whatever we get to, we get to.
Comments or thoughts? Melissa.
I think a part of it, if we have time, that whole 90-day thing
Do it all.
was something I hadn't thought about before right now, this meeting, but I hope we can get an extension and then we can put it in smaller pieces.
Well,
I'd rather have as much as I can have as soon as I can get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's, Wyeth, because you have done this work before, and I also, you know, so I'm going to lean on you a little bit here. I'm gonna hope that we're gonna get the extension now. Of course, I don't want this, like the rest of us, to go on for years and years. We need to be able to wrap this up in a reasonable amount of time. While you're putting that together within your experience, if you say like, this part looks like a good first step, then at our next meeting, we should work on that. Like if you feel like there's some good breaking points for us to work on that and would like to sort of put that into the format, I think that that seems reasonable.
It's all a derivative of how much confined thought process do you have. So if you take like kind of the whole thing on, everybody's thoughts individually will start to get repetitive with no input as you begin to do it, right? Versus if you take the mission statement and we digest that, then the next set gets influenced by that conversation, right? So it's just a matter of kind of like what I would suggest is that you take a pass at all of it, really kind of at like a high level, don't get too mired in the details. Bring ideas to the table that you think are sort of glaring, and that conversation will come out of it, and that'll keep you from getting too sort of linearly tracked in your thoughts. But I would say go for the whole thing, because it's just, otherwise we'll be writing this for 3 years, would be my take on it. So
Okay. I think that works. And can I just get a show of hands if that works for folks?
I mean, we'll sort of, as we see it, we'll start to be able to react to it a lot better.
yeah. And
I'm still not exactly sure what you're doing, but it sounds good at this level.
it's pretty simple. It's not.
Well, I mean, some things are and some things aren't.
Right. Okay. So Wyatt's got his charge. Thank you for that. I will be in contact. I do have a meeting immediately following this, so it'll be a couple hours before I get back to you. And so now the next thing on the agenda is set a specific date and location for future meetings. Do we want to just set up our next meeting now? And then I guess, is this a good time for people? Do we need to look at other times? Or do we need to send out a doodle to just find some times moving forward?
Are we going to do all of these as Zoom meetings?
I think it might depend on the time of day.
Right.
So I will just share that I always have a meeting on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. So for me to jump from one to another, it kind of needs to be Zoom, but that's my personal thing. So
I can put it in the calendar and let it ride till we're done. Just easier for me. I can schedule around them a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this time's fine.
Melissa?
This time slot works if it's Zoom. I have a meeting right before this one. And you said Tuesday, but I think you meant Wednesday, right, Carrie?
Yes, I did. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, it's okay. It's a thing that we all.
Okay, so let's just plan I'm gonna look one more time at my calendar. And Tom, I'm sorry, I did not hear you. This time works or does not work?
Oh, it does.
It does, okay.
Works
Yeah.
it works as well as anything.
Okay, perfect. So let's do this then. We're gonna say 1 o'clock on Wednesdays moving forward until we're done. Is that fair? Okay.
Weekly?
And weekly. Let's do weekly. Good. And then my charge will be to get us make sure we have an extension so I know what our deadline is and I can let us know at the next meeting.
Well,
And
we've run out the 90 days.
Yeah, so we'll get the extension.
Yeah.
And
Depends on when you think formed.
was that today or
Was it
was
formed
that
today?
yeah, that's
It's easily interpreted that way.
I guess technically we didn't have a chair until today, so it couldn't be an organization until you had somebody to run it.
Didn't have a meeting, didn't have a chair,
okay. So I will work on that and then Wyatt get you the go ahead to send out that
Yeah, and
Don't
what
do
I'll-
it till I tell you it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And if my only last question on this is, we can either, well, I'll make a recommendation rather than a question. I would say that generally we want to try to compile the answers before the meeting and have one view rather than everybody having separate spreadsheets. And Carrie, like, I could compile it and send it to you, and then you can bring it up and we can go through it. So you have a view in one spot. So generally, yeah.
That's kind of how we did it for the growth policy, only we had a staff person doing it. So if you just get approval from the city that it's.
Okay.
And it was very effective use of time, I agree.
Yeah.
It's really the only way to do it.
Okay. All right, well, I will do all the follow-up on that to make sure that we are in our lane and legal and moving forward with that. And then I will be in touch with you. And then
So
we can
your homework would just be due by like 10 a.m. the day of,
okay.
right? Would be fine.
Okay.
So we'll be getting something from you in the next day or two.
As soon as Carrie says this is good to go, we'll send it out.
Okay.
And I don't know, I'm gonna send it out as a PowerPoint. Does that work for everybody as a format template? Okay, great.
That'll work. Okay, I'm gonna move us along because we have 2 minutes left in our legal meeting. And so any further member comment? Okay, do we have any public comment? So any public that's on the phone now or on the computer, if you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand or come off mute. I am not seeing any. Okay, well, this meeting of the General Principal Strategic Planning Ad Hoc Committee. Oh, let me get, may I get a motion to adjourn?
So
Move to adjourn. Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Third.
Aye. All right, so thank you all. And this meeting of the Guiding Principal Strategic Plan Ad Hoc Committee is now adjourned. Thank you all, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, folks.